Welcome to another edition of the Sports Lunatics on YouTube. Hi, I'm Shawn, Lavigne in Halifax, Nova Scotia.
And I'm Howie Mooney in Barrie, Ontario.
And on this edition of the Sports Lunatics, we're going to talk about the end of an era in Raptors basketball history. Howie, recently the Raptors traded two pieces from their 2019 NBA championship team, OG Anunoby to the Knicks, followed by Pascal Siakam to the Pacers. Don't care about the trades themselves. I want to talk about just the history behind that team. And in terms of those are two of the final three pieces, Chris Boucher being the last remaining member of that 2019 team. We've talked about it several times on our Sports Lunatics podcast in terms of what a ride that was in 2019. But how did you feel, hearing about the trades and just what it meant to you as a Raptors fan?
Well, I mean, that 2019 run, and we've said it a million times, but that was one of the most fun sporting runs that I can remember as a sports fan, in my life, or at least since I got away from TV cameras and microphones and things like that, as I talk into a microphone. But when they said that Pascal Siakam had been with the Raptors for 7 years, I had to do a double take because it didn't feel like 7 years had gone by since he joined the team. It felt like a lot shorter period of time, but it's true. I mean, he's been with the team for 7 years, and I mean, we're in 2024 now. I have to get my head around that the fact that we're in 2024. But the fact that the team wasn't going anywhere with him, they had to do something. They had to blow things up. Getting rid of OG, I think, hurt more. Everybody knew that at some point they were going to trade Pascal Siakam, but getting rid of OG Anunoby, I think, kind of hurt more because they thought that he was a younger piece that they could maybe build around. But it's clear now that Scotty Barnes is the piece that they're going to build around, and hopefully, with the way things are going, with the other guys, with Bennett quickly, the other guys that they've obtained, they can do something. But it's not about 2024 anymore. It's now about the future, and that is where the team is going. But to talk about that 7-year run, really, it's only about 1 year out of that 7 years. It's about 2018, 2019, and the way that the Raptors put it all together. They got Kawhi. Kawhi was basically the guy that dragged them by the collar and took them to the final. And when, as you've said, when he sunk that one basket that went doop, 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 swish against Philadelphia, there was a purpose. There was a reason. And I never thought that they could get past Milwaukee in the next round, but they did. A guy at work explained to me, even before the playoffs started, how they were going to get past Milwaukee. He made it all make sense. I still didn't believe him until they actually did it. And to this day, I still go up to him and tell him, you explained it. You knew it was going to happen before I did. You knew how it was going to happen and that it was going to happen. And then they got to the finals against Golden State, and now you know the rest of the story.
Well, they just felt like a team of destiny after Kawhi hit that shot. Some would say they had no business winning that game, just the way a lot of their stars struggled at the end of that game, and Jimmy Butler was going to take it over. But to hit that shot, because I thought if they go into overtime, they're done. Jimmy Butler was taking over that game, and for Kawhi to hit that miracle shot in that fashion, it just seemed like that was a Cinderella story waiting to happen. They still had to get through Milwaukee, and they still had to go through Golden State, which were significant enough series wins, obviously. But that run, but Siakam was a big piece of that team, and to think that he was picked 27th in his draft year, and to develop into an All NBA player and multiple All Star, and just his rise, because he did struggle out of the gate. It took him some time to get established, but once he did and learned the game, he started to excel. And one of the great, That was another thing about that 2019 team, and I was fortunate enough, at least for 3/4 of that season, and then when they were making all the moves, bringing other guys in, and you knew they were going for it, but they were a likable team. Like, you were rooting for them. There were some Raptor teams I don't know that were very likable in certain years with certain players, but that was a team you rooted for. You could feel something special was happening right from the day they got Kawhi. And although DeMar DeRozan was the sacrificial lamb, unfortunately, with that situation, uh, you knew something was changing in Toronto. And Pascal Siakam not only benefited by being part of that team, but I think that experience and learning under Kawhi and learning from Gasol and other guys that were on that team made him a professional and carried him through to the status where he is now. And Indiana's getting a hell of a player, but it was an end of an era. It felt like everybody talked about it, and with OG gone to New York, it just felt like, okay, we had a hell of a run. There were many years of disappointment where we were, it felt like that Raptor fans were like, we were a player away. Well, that player away was Kawhi, but it also was these late first round picks that they were able to develop as well, right? The Van Fleets and who wasn't even drafted, and all these guys that were playing a significant role in minutes. And then you had the general, Kyle Lowry. And to see a graphic, and that was what happened the day of the trade of the starting five, and they were all with different teams. It really put it in perspective, you know, uh, for that one magical year. Hey, I know a lot of cities that would trade Toronto for one magical year the way we had it back in 2019.
Yes, I think that you said something before though that made a lot of sense, and it felt a lot like the Florida Marlins winning the World Series and then blowing it all up. It all fell apart. But Siakam's story was pretty spectacular, given that he met Masai Ujiri through Giants of Africa. He wanted to just go to play basketball in South. I think it was in South Africa, or just to go just for a tournament, and then he ended up getting noticed, and then he was going to going to play in that tournament and go back to become a priest in a seminary. But Masai Ujiri noticed him and brought him to Toronto, and I just love that story, that where what he could have done and where he ended up. It's wonderful. I think it's spectacular, and as you said, I think he complements Indiana's team and style better than he did in Toronto at this point in Toronto, the Toronto Raptors' existence.
Pascal Siakam recently spoke to The Athletic and talked about the impact not only Toronto had, but the country of Canada, the fan base, just how they embraced him, just what he loved about the city, just the multiculturalism. And he said, some guys will, and I'm paraphrasing, but essentially alluding to some guys will say, well, I've got a home in Toronto. He's like, no, 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 that's my home. That will always be my home. And, a lot of those Raptors from that team say the same thing when they left. Toronto will always be that home to them, no matter where they ended up after that 2018-2019 season.
Toronto is that kind of a city though, where, I mean, first of all, it's so very diverse, and it's so welcoming, I think, to a lot of people who come in from other countries, or that don't even know the city, and then they can blend in very, very easily. You remember Matt Bonner used to take the subway to Raptor games. It's just, I think Toronto is very easy that way. There are some people that don't like Toronto, and I understand that. I mean, I grew up in Ottawa. We hated Toronto at the time, but now, having lived in the GTA and having worked in Toronto for the last 20 some years in my life, I mean, I will go back to Ottawa when I retire eventually, but right now I'm very, very comfortable being in Toronto. People message me from home all the time and say, "Aren't you worried? Aren't you worried?" No, I'm not worried at all. Toronto's my home. It's my home, just as it is for Pascal Siakam.
And we have Drake.
We have trade.
Wow. Well, that is a selling point to some people, I guess.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Don't ask me to name 3 Drake songs because I couldn't, uh, but no, it felt like an end of an era, for sure, when you heard that he was getting traded, Siakam getting traded to Indiana in a package deal, and, it was a hell of a run, and, we will now see what happens to the future of the Toronto Raptors, but you mentioned Masai Ujiri, like him, dislike him. He brought us a championship in Toronto that we were craving, that we were, and made one of the boldest moves and most controversial moves a general manager can make, and it paid off because it could have very easily gone the other way, as we've seen in other examples in the sports world. But for Masai Ujiri, he brought Toronto a well-deserved NBA championship.
And winning a championship is not easy, Shawnee. Winning a championship is hard. And I mean, it was unexpected, but it was wonderful.
And that's the perfect way to end this YouTube edition of the Sports Lunatics. Please like our video and subscribe to our channel. On behalf of Howie Mooney, I'm Shawn Lavigne. Have a
Have a
great
great sports
sports
day.
day.